What's driving loyalty loss and what can you do about it? This is presented by John Tudor and Constance Hill. This is one of a series of ongoing webinars powered by Loyalty 360. All of these webinars are archived on our sites for our members. Mr. John Tudor is a PhD, a psychologist, and a business strategist who analyzes how changes in technology in the marketplace impact what customers value and how they make decisions. Based on these insights, he advises client companies on how to align their strategies and practice. Constance Hill is president of VeraCentra, a marketing software and service company committed to helping clients transform their campaigns into customer-centric programs. By tailoring its software and services to meet client requirements, VeraCentra empowers customer-focused marketers to achieve their goals. I will now turn it over to Constance.
Hey,
also, I want to let people know if you have questions, feel free to use the tool in the webinar to field questions to myself, and I will ask them to Constance and John at the end. Thank you very much. Constance.
Thank you, Mark. So I just want to let everybody out there know that John and I have been working together for nearly 7 years, our two companies. And John likes to get into the heads of consumers and likes to study their behaviors. And as Mark said, he has this great way of translating how he sees the consumer changing into real business imperatives. And I personally like to follow his work so that our company, VeraCentra, can stay a step ahead of emerging business issues that may affect marketing. I'm a little different from John in that I focus on practical solutions marketers can implement to take advantage of the emerging opportunities or to make the changes needed to be more competitive. So that's how John and I work together, and basically you'll see here as we present, we've actually separated the webinar into 2 parts. And the first part, John will cover, and what he's going to talk about is customer defection. What's causing it? Why is it getting worse? And at a high level, what are some companies doing about stopping it? Then I'm going to take over the second part of the webinar, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth, and I will be providing some detail and data about the financial performance of companies that have actually mastered customer experience management and loyalty. And in part 2, we'll also cover the single most important action you can take right now to reduce churn, improve customer satisfaction, and increase the value of your customer base. So let's go ahead and get started. John, you want to kick us off?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I want to start off by saying that I'm often introduced about talking about something at a high level. The level that I'm talking at is somewhere between about 5'6" and about 6'6", right about where people's heads are. So I'm really going to try to give you some insights into how customers think and how they make decisions, and particularly how that's changed recently. So let me start off by advancing a slide here. I want to start off by talking about what I call some inconvenient truths about loyalty and customer spending. And I might preface this by saying that since Bernanke has announced that the recession is over, a lot of people are hoping that things will get back to normal and they can continue to do what they did before the recession started. Well, I'm here to tell you that that ain't going to happen. What was normal is part of history. There's a new normal out there that people in business need to reckon with and deal with. So I'm going to hit hard on that, and then make some suggestions about how you can deal with it. And so the first area is this whole notion of customer spending. We certainly saw a drop-off in customer spending with the recession and a shift in the type of spending to store brands and lower-cost products. But the real issue that people should reckon with is that there's been a change in the economic circumstance that we're in that impacts businesses as well as customers. And to get a grip on this, If we look back, the debt to the disposable income ratio, the amount we spent went up relative to the amount we earned, went up exponentially for the last 30 years. And basically, we were buying on credit. And if you've had some interactions with your credit card company or tried to take a loan out recently, you know that credit has gotten extremely tight. And that's not going to change in the foreseeable future. So one of the things that businesses need to reckon with is that the nation is going to be, we're going to be a nation that reduces our consumption levels. So you need to start about, well, what do we do? How do we attract and keep customers if that's the case? The second area that should come to mind is that brands are in trouble. Now, brands, what is a brand? Well, brand equity is this sort of intangible that is supposed to forecast future spendings, and it has to do with trust, recognition, the belief in quality, and so forth. Well, there are a number of things that have happened. First of all, during the recession, what happened is a lot of people switched from name brands to store brands. And as we do research on this particular population, we're finding that many of them believe that the quality is just as good, and that they're not going to switch back. And that also feeding into that is that we're more frugal, so we're going to tend to stay there. But the real critical issue is that over the last decade, trust in brands has dropped by 50%. And this is from large-scale studies. So across a variety of brands, virtually all brand categories, trust has dropped dramatically. There are some exceptions, and the exceptions are people that would have what you might call energized or highly emotional brands. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what underlies that in a minute. So if you are focused on building brand equity, you need to reevaluate your focus. Okay, the third area is this notion of customer defections. So we always worry about this, and especially in tough times, we like to say protect your customer base. Well, last year the CMO Council, the Chief Marketing Officer Council, commissioned a study that looked at over 32 million consumers and looked at their buying patterns. And in particular looked at highly loyal customers. And in this case, they defined highly loyal customers as people who bought over 70% of the items in that category from a particular brand. So here's what happened between 2007 and 2008. Over 57% of the highly loyal customers became less loyal to that particular brand. And 1/3 of them defected completely. That was before the recession. So these are trends that you can't sweep under the carpet, and you need to actually acknowledge and do something about if you expect to have retained customers and have profitable, loyal customers. So what's going on here? Why? I mentioned that there were some companies that are successful that had energized brands and highly emotional brands. So why are they successful? Well, here's the psychologist in me coming out. People tend to buy with one of two primary buying personalities. Same person can use different personalities in different circumstances. So you could say that customers are two-faced. So let's look at the two buying personality. The one on the left is when we buy with indifference, when we're relatively closed-minded to persuasion, or we even become adversarial. In this circumstance, we're looking for a means to an end. We're treating things as commodities. So when I go out to buy gasoline for my car, I don't see a big difference between the different brands. So I make the purchase based on this heuristic. I buy based on the best trade-off between price and convenience. I just want to get it over with. And so that heuristic, if you think about it, we use that frequently because it makes life easy for us. But it makes it very difficult to get loyal customers because if I buy on the best trade-off between price and convenience, there's no inherent loyalty. On the other side, the other personality is when it's meaningful to someone, when they're actually engaged in it emotionally and logically, when they're connected to whatever it is, to the outcome that they're trying to achieve, and they relate to it. So think about this from a business standpoint. The world is complex and it's changing and it's confusing. But what customers want is a better outcome for themselves or a better, more compelling customer experience. So businesses that help them attain this, a better outcome or a better experience, engender loyalty, higher spending rates, greater desire, and so forth. So the question you should be asking yourself is, what mindset do your marketing and sales strategies provoke? So let's look at a couple of examples that you can, so you can get a drift of what you might be doing and what you could be doing. So let's look at an example of triggering mindsets. So here's an ad that comes out from McDonald's, and I'm not picking on McDonald's. They're making some efforts to shift, but here's the whole focus of this is price. So it triggers the cost mentality, and when we're in the cost mentality, we're either adversarial, looking out to get the biggest bang for the buck, and making comparisons on that basis. And any kind of loyalty that comes at is like a house built on a foundation of sand. It's not going to last. So let's contrast that with a company, and this company happens to be in the UK, Pret a Manger. It's a sandwich shop, so it's essentially the same business. And within their shops, rather than advertising price, they put these, what they call Pret Passion Facts, in posters around the store. Now they use a little bit better designed poster than what I'm showing here, but this will give you the drift of what they do. So imagine walking into a sandwich shop, standing in line to place your order, and seeing posters like this. So here's one. Of all the ingredients we use, our avocados have to be the most temperamental. Treat them badly and they just don't taste right. That's why they have their huge ripening room all to themselves, and why our avocado chap turns each one of them by hand every day. It's to make sure that every bite of avo is a perfect one. So think about the consequence of that if you've read it. It increases the likelihood that you're going to put an avocado in your sandwich, or order one that already has it. It also puts you in a sort of positive frame of mind, because it's got a little bit whimsical and humorous, got a little bit of English twist to it. Now think about what happens when you go back to the ranch or to the office after lunch and someone says, "How was lunch?" If you've been to McDonald's, you're likely to say it was fine. If you've been to Pret a Manger and had avocado, you're likely to rave about the success of it. So they've built in a couple things: desire for products, a positive frame of mind, and a reason to become an advocate. Now, here's the skinny. Pret a Manger is only open for lunch and dinner, so it's much shorter hours than McDonald's. They pay much higher wages, and they only use premium ingredients. But per square foot of shops, they're 4 times more profitable. So think about it. They're engaging their customers in the experience that they're going to have. Okay, let's move on and look at a company that's been at the top of their category for over 10 years and how they got there. In 1998, Avis ranked at the bottom in customer satisfaction and loyalty in the auto rental business. 12th, bottom of the heap. But for the last 10 years, they've been the star of the industry. 10 years in a row, that's pretty remarkable in any industry. So what did they do? Well, back in 1998, they started building on what I call an outside-in strategy. Instead of thinking about how do we have better cars than Hertz or anyone else, which you can't really do, cleaner cars, not really possible, faster check-in, check-out, all of those are pretty much the same. They're givens. So what can we do? We can take an outside-in view of what we offer. That is, look at ourselves from a customer perspective. So here's a couple of examples. Back in 1998, we didn't have smart cell phones. So one of the things that their typical customer, a business customer, was concerned about when they got off the flight was whether their meeting was still on, whether anything had happened at the office, and so forth. So they set up smart kiosks within their check-in facility so that anybody could go up, get faxes, and so forth. So they could take care of what's on their mind. When they returned, when you return the car, one of the things you're concerned about is my flight on time, what gate is it, will I get on the right bus? So they set up their checkout people so that the PDAs, so they could turn and say, oh, Mr. Tudor, if you tell me your flight number, I'll check and find out what gate it is and find out whether it's on time. That's a beautiful thing. So it reduces the anxiety there. So think about what they just accomplished. They made the experience a better experience for the customer. And where they couldn't create differentiation, they didn't worry about it. Let's move on to a third group. I want to emphasize that loyalty is a journey. And let's look at the journey that Lexus went on with their was a program that they set up for their dealers. So again, in 1998, as it happens, they wanted to introduce a program that would improve the customer loyalty at the dealer level. And one of the things we were able to discover at that time is that for every buck that a dealer put into the traditional marketing programs that they use, which were much like the McDonald's sign, selling on price and emphasizing this sort of competitive purchase transaction mentality, they got $8 back. So the idea was to introduce a program that would change this. So let's look at what happened. Over time, things got much better. By 2002, which happened to be the first year that they'd let us publicize the outcome of this program, for every buck that a dealer put in, they got $32 back. A dramatic improvement. By 2007, for every dollar they put in, they got $59 back. So it progressively got better. The relationship got stronger, and the profit margin got better, and the advocacy of their customers got better. So here's what happened when they approached the dealers to try to get them to buy into this. They said, we want to set up a program that is triggered by events, time, a variety of things that are relevant to your customers to increase your sales and build a stronger relationship. What most of the dealers said is we don't have any data that reflects on that or has anything to do with that. And so the agency that ran this is, well, you have transactional data. If you give us access to the transactional data, we will use it as a starting point and begin building better data. So they eliminated this argument that we are not in a position to take advantage of triggered programs. The second thing that happened is that as they engaged in it, the relationships themselves became stronger and the response to them became stronger. So keep that in mind, that you want to reach the customers in a way that's meaningful to them, that is, have a better outcome, make it more emotional and emotionally engaging, and you need to have a starting point that builds and expect it to be an ongoing journey. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Connie.
Okay, thank you, John. So, you know, I do agree with you, John. Loyalty is a journey, and it's all about building up that positive customer experience and creating excitement about your brand, stimulating that positive word of mouth, and especially seeing the returns on your investment increase year over year. Now that's exciting. So what I like to do is share with you a couple of studies done by Forrester, and if you could bear with me, I'm going to give you some background information that will help make this particular slide make more sense. Customer experience has been around for many years, but I really think it's lately that customer experience has become more tangible in terms of how the customer experience impacts revenue and profitability. And as Forrester has proven here, there is a direct link between customer experience and loyalty. So it was last year that Forrester performed a study to determine if and how customer experience impacts revenue. So in this study, Forrester did identify that there is a direct correlation between loyalty and customer experience. So let me give you a little bit of background on this study to frame the slide that you see here. Forrester chose 113 companies to create a measurement of customer experience, or to create some sort of customer experience index. And of those 113 companies, Forrester talked to over 4,500 customers about those companies' interactions, and what they were looking for was the ability to get feedback and to gauge the usefulness, usability, and enjoyability of the customer experience with those 113 companies. So based on the customer responses, Forrester created a customer index for the 113 firms across 10 different industries. Now, to understand how experience impacts the top line, Forrester looked at the percentage of loyal customers within the 113 companies. And to measure loyalty and come up with a loyalty index, if you will, Forrester used the three elements of loyalty behavior: willingness to buy more, reluctance to switch, and likelihood to recommend. Forrester then performed a regression analysis between customer loyalty and the customer experience index, and found that a change in loyalty directly corresponds to a change in customer experience index. So you could see here the regression line, that this particular line does reflect and illustrate the direct correlation between customer experience and relevance and customer loyalty. So Forrester took another step and created a model to understand in a little bit more quantifiable means the impact of revenue by industry if each industry could move the customer experience just 10 percentage points. So the chart you see now represents the amount of revenue in millions that would increase based on moving the needle for additional purchases, churn reduction, and word of mouth. So a little bit of background here. Assumptions for number of customers, average revenue per customer, average additional purchases, and estimates for word of mouth were created. And then by applying those assumptions into the model, Forrester estimated on an industry-by-industry basis the total amount of revenue that could be generated if that particular industry moved the index, the customer experience index, 10 percentage points. For example, let's look at the retailers. And I see here it looks like the legend got cut off. This lighter blue color actually relates to, let's see, that is relating to additional purchases. This medium color blue relates to churn reduction, and the darker blue here corresponds with word of mouth. So if you take the retailers as an example, for additional purchases and moving that customer index 10 percentage points, an additional 62.5 million can be generated within the retailer industry. Same holds true with churn reduction, moving the customer index 10 percentage points. The retailers could generate 110.2 million in possible revenue based on efforts reducing churn, and then 87.4 million from positive word of mouth, for a total of 260.1 million in possible revenue growth for the retail sector alone. So why aren't more companies focused on delivering a positive customer experience to create loyalty? The revenues are out there to be had. Why aren't more companies jumping on the bandwagon? And the short answer to that question is really tradition. Traditionally, companies just aren't built to create and support a holistic and positive customer experience. In essence, our biggest obstacle is our own traditions. So really, when you think about it, you think about what drives us as a company. And I have these up here as yesterday and today. You could even say current and tomorrow, because so many companies are still tied up in the traditions of yesterday. We think in terms of transactions more than we think in terms of customers. Okay, so we do think about customers, but we think about them in terms of identifying which ones will drive more product transactions. We value revenues, and we rarely value and measure our customer value. As marketers, we often push our product campaigns over and over to prospects who really don't care, when we should be dialoguing with our customers and trying to engage them in relationships with our brand. And lastly, when you think about how we define success, it's always the big race for market share, when really we should be racing for customer equity share. So old traditions affect several aspects of our companies, from process to people to structure to technology tools. And frankly, old habits are hard to break. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that breaking all those habits is no small hurdle. And if that's what you're thinking, you're right. Companies that are looking at migrating from the traditional view to the customer view are looking at this transformation as a huge corporate-wide change initiative. So when I'm talking to marketers one-to-one about the issue of managing customer experience, marketers are always concerned about what they can do today and what can they do right now to begin to move the needle and to begin to embrace true management of customer experience. And a lot of times I'm asked if I could identify the one thing that's low in investment, quick to implement, and would have an immediate impact on loyalty, churn prevention, and profitability, what would that one thing be? And how I answer that question is you have to create an integrated 360 view of your customers. As long as companies operate in those functional silos with separate systems, the customer experience will be fragmented and near impossible to manage. So it really doesn't matter what industry you're in. I've got some samples of different systems that actually house customer data, but it really doesn't matter what types of systems you use to collect customer information. Customer data can be found and can be integrated into one data mart to yield a single 360 view of the customer. And I believe while this is a team effort, because it requires cooperation from others who have customer data, that marketing is in the ideal position to take a lead on a project such as this. It is marketing that's charged with moving that needle we talked about earlier. It's marketing that's charged with growing revenue by customer. It's marketing that's charged with reducing churn, and it's marketing that's often charged with managing a positive and consistent experience for the customer. So once you have a centralized customer data mart and you've integrated all your customer data into a single view, that being one step, what it empowers marketing is to perform all the activities that are necessary to really understand the customer and to manage that customer experience. So radiating off the centralized customer data mart are the different tools that help you develop improved customer strategies and help speed up decision-making around marketing to your customer. So activities include measuring and monitoring the key customer metrics. It includes the ability to predict purchase likelihood or propensity to attrit. It includes having a 360 view and having that view available for you and your colleagues to share, so you're all looking at something in common. It also provides, and John talked about this with the Lexus example, it provides you with the data that you need to understand the relevancy and to create rules and triggers that automatically launch communications that can be timed to perfection around behaviors you've identified for customers that will have a propensity to attrit. You can also use that data to personalize those communications to customers. So to my mind, integrating customer data is the one step that does take effort, but it won't break your budget, and it will provide immediate value through customer insight and customer understanding, and will yield you what you need to manage the customer experience. So I'm going to go into one more study here, and taking that one step of integrating all your customer data so you can have a 360 view can be considered one small step, but the impact is significant. So in sharing this other study with you, this is a study that was done in April 2010 by the Aberdeen Group, so it was done just last month, and it was sponsored by us, VeraCentra. The study revealed 4 key performance criteria that distinguishes what Aberdeen calls best in class from industry average and laggard organizations. So for the purposes of this report, top performance was defined in terms of the ability to achieve a 360-degree view of the customer and then reaping the appropriate business benefits from that achievement. So best-in-class top performers basically have full integration for a 360-degree view of their customer, and they're actively using that data to achieve results. So the results that these companies are achieving and the criteria for results include customer retention, customer satisfaction, net client value, and also efficiency, because many organizations in their quest to achieve this 360 view have their subordinates spend a lot of time searching and combining data from different reports that are produced from several systems in an effort to piece together some sort of cohesive 360 view. So the percentage of time spent searching for customer data was deemed as a measure of efficiency. So what concerns me when I look at the results of this survey is the significant gap between the top performers and the average and the laggard performers. So check this out. There's a 29% difference in customer retention between best in class and laggard. There's 56% difference in customer satisfaction, 56%, and a 15% difference in time spent searching for customer data. I think what concerns me the most here is the actual value of the customer database. And let me clarify here that net client value measures the customer's annual spend measured consistently either as revenue or bookings. And the survey actually revealed an increase for best in class, but a 9% decline year over year for laggards, even a 2% decline in industry average companies. So to me, simply taking no action to create a 360 view is not an option. In fact, if you wait, the hurdle gets even higher to jump. If your competitor is a top performer and you're classified as a laggard performer, your competitor has a huge head start. So these are the top 3 capabilities reported by those top performers in the Aberdeen study. Number 1 is the ability to create a standard formula for determining customer value. And that formula is shared throughout the company along with other key customer measures and basically yielding, having all stakeholders and all colleagues staying focused on the customer. Number 2 is the ability to understand the behaviors that lead to customer attrition and the ability to create business rules that alert and the ability to create triggered communications to prevent customers from leaving. And the third ability is to know your customers better than their competitors and to share that knowledge with the frontline folks who actually communicate and interact with the customer and deliver that personalized service. And those are the folks who are actually creating that positive customer experience for your customer. Now, these capabilities basically have led to key competencies within these organizations, and these competencies are basically the ability to manage customer churn and keep attrition low, the ability to increase customer loyalty by creating personalized customer experiences, and the ability to improve the overall lifetime value of your customer base. So to install the 360 view capability within your organization, think in terms of combining process, knowledge, and technology tools. Often, all the right tools, knowledge, and process design skills aren't available within an organization. So you need to understand where your customer data resides, and you need to know what is meaningful to capture in terms of customer data for future analysis, trigger setting, and personalization. A data audit is a good idea. A data audit will provide you with the sources and the contents of all customer data located within your organization. So think about a data audit as the basic inventory of your company's customer data. Technology tools enable you to aggregate all that customer data into a single data repository or data mart. And from that data mart, the key capabilities of measuring triggers and knowledge share can be created. So knowledge and skills to create standardized customer value or to help in behavior analysis or modeling can be found internally, and oftentimes clients look to the CFO for help in that area, as well as their own internal IT teams, or the process can be outsourced to a service provider.
All right. We have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Are you good for those now?
Well, let me just go through
Sorry.
a couple more slides, and then we can take questions, because I really do look forward to those questions.
Okay, sorry about that.
Just by example, in terms of outside service providers, I thought I'd throw up a slide here and talk about integrated services that are provided by VeraCentra, because an outside service provider can supplement your internal capabilities and also can act as an objective facilitator and project manager. So just really quickly, our offering includes products, consulting, and services that are tailored to each customer with total focus on the results that customer is trying to achieve. So we take our technology tools, we take our consulting services, and we take our services and combine them into unique solutions, and as well as offering our solutions or our services on an a la carte basis. So I'll just quickly sum up here, and then we can take questions. John talked about how customers are changing and how that change is increasing defection and reducing loyalty. We've identified that poor customer experience only accelerates the process, and that customer experience is directly tied to customer loyalty. We've identified that companies struggle to deliver positive customer experience because they do not have the deep customer understanding, which is definitely necessary for developing customer strategy and empowering the people in their organizations to ensure personalized customer experience. And we also identified the reason there is a struggle is that the traditional business processes and methods that are complementary to customer centricity are completely counter to what an organization needs to be doing in terms of processes, tools, and knowledge. And we also know that companies that are jumping the hurdle are outperforming those companies that are falling behind. So those that have successfully integrated the 360 view are really excelling in the area of customer satisfaction, retention, efficiency, and customer value. And we know that by combining process, technology, tools, and people, that the 360-degree view of the customer can be created, and the same customer data can be shared by everyone in the organization to create a personalized customer experience. And that a good first step toward achieving a 360 view is a data audit. Now, before you shoot questions, I'd like to just give you 5 questions to think about. And those are, how well are you measuring and tracking customer satisfaction? How well are you measuring and tracking customer retention? Are you measuring and tracking customer value? Is your customer data in one centralized data mart? And what's the gap between your ability to create a positive customer experience versus that of your competitors? So now would be a good time to take questions if there are any, Mark.
Yeah, the first question we have, the gentleman wanted to know on the last slide, how do you measure and make sure the customer surveys with regard to their satisfaction levels are effective? Traditionally, he questions that behavioral data may not line up with what they do in a survey. So how is it most effective to bring the two together?
So the question is the actual behavior versus what they tell you?
Correct. Actual versus prescribed,
okay,
or what they value.
So I would be interested in John's take on that. When we go back to the actual performance indicators, I do not believe that you can look at customer satisfaction by itself as an indicator. So And I believe it's for that very reason. So customer behavior, you can actually analyze customer behavior to understand what their behavior is really telling you versus what the surveys are saying. And then you have to take that customer survey data and you have to map it against what you're achieving in terms of customer retention and what you're achieving in terms of your customer database value. John, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Well, I think that people should look at surveys as a starting point. So you're gathering some information, and it's going to have some error in it. It's going to be an approximation. It's going to be a better than a guesstimate. So it gives you a starting point of where your customers might be, and from that, based on that, you can start identifying where you should focus your energy. So if you set up a triggered and an ongoing program of the nature that Connie's talking about, or that I talked about with the Lexus Toyota situation, you use that as a starting point, and in a sense you set up the triggers based on the assumption that this is how you can reach the customer. But you also track whether or not you do or you don't. So that as you are actually creating the interactions, you are refining the process of communicating with them. It'd be a big mistake to assume that the survey itself was definitive and that you can roll along merrily until you do the next one.
Okay, great. Can you give me an example of a company or client that you've worked with that has made the shift to a 360-degree paradigm? And also, the 360-degree term is used quite frequently in today's marketing tools. What is kind of a good definition for 360 engagement or 360-degree view of the customer? So
I'll take that second question first. In terms of a definition of 360-degree view, for me, at a practical level, what we're talking about here is providing access to all customer information to any particular individual that is in actual contact or point of contact with the customer. So, for example, the last thing you want to do is have your salesperson make a phone call and begin to strike up a dialogue around cross-selling or upselling that particular customer when your accounting department is reaching out at the very same time, threatening to take that particular customer to court or collections. So to me, 360-degree view is simply information that's pulled together and available for everyone to be working from the same center of truth, so that strategies and contact strategies can be created and everybody understands how they're touching the customer and in the time frame in which they're touching the customer. Now, before I give an example of transitioning, John, do you have a perspective on that was from a practical application or a practical
perspective? I would just add that the 360-degree view, I think, had its origins in CRM probably a decade and a half ago, and it tended to reflect that we didn't want to lose information that you've talked about that's happening with the interactions between the company and the customer. But there's another viewpoint that's very crucial to bring into it, and that's what's happening in social media between customers and customers. That has a lot to say about your company and how they view it. So we need to expand that 360-degree view and add in this outside-in perspective that literally isn't about the actual interactions with you or the dialogue with you, that it's the customer-to-customer conversation that can be very powerful.
I think at the elevated level, another term for 360-degree view that I hear quite frequently is customer intelligence. And from a strategic perspective, a 360 view / customer intelligence is the process of managing and analyzing customer data from all sources and using that to drive marketing performance, but also business strategy. So 360-degree view, customer intelligence, I'm hearing those terms used interchangeably. In terms of migrating to 360-degree view and an example of a company that's done it, I'm going to use a smaller company as an example. A lot of you have probably heard of this company. It's called Coit Services, and basically they are they're a little over $100 million in revenue. They're a franchised operation. They own several franchises, their own franchises. They're located in several different areas of the country, and basically the trigger point for migration to customer centricity came when the mass marketing campaigns that Coit was doing were no longer working. And Coit had no ability really to analyze and really understand their customer retention numbers and their customer value numbers. And as a result, they looked at the possibility of trying to bring in some sort of analysis tool so that they could understand what's really happening with their customers. Coit hooked up with VeraCentra. We worked together to bring not only their CRM data into a customer data mart, but also all of their transactional data into the data mart. And we started to build out profiles which were actually being done out in the field. So when the estimator would go out and meet with a customer and provide a quote for cleaning services in the home or office, that estimator would begin to collect data on the customer in terms of did they have pets, did they have kids, and the type of flooring, et cetera, that the customer had in their home. So over time, and again, as John pointed out, loyalty is a journey. Over time, the data mart became richer and richer, and we were able to use the data within the data mart to begin to analyze the customer and understand the attrition behaviors. And we did understand that customers, and did learn that customers left Coit after their first cleaning. So we were able to put in some strategies and tactics to make specific trigger-based communications in the form of thank yous, in the form of surveys to those customers, thanking them for their business, in addition to sending out triggered reminders that another cleaning and service is due, and oh, by the way, would you like us to do something extra, maybe extra cleaning because of the kids, some sort of extra service that would add value to the customer because we knew and understand they had kids in their household. So that's kind of an example of a migration, and the trigger point was really the fact that the programs just stopped working for them, and they didn't know why, and it required the analysis to really understand what was going on. So I hope that answers your question. Hello? Mark?
Sorry about that. I hit the mute button. The next question is, what's more important, customer loyalty, customer engagement, or customer experience? Where would you put them in a continuum? Do two or three, do two of them wrap up to one? And what's the biggest idea today in loyalty marketing or in marketing in general?
So your list was loyalty, engagement, and
experience.
experience?
Well, I'll jump in. If we talk, the customer experience is a consequence, and so is loyalty. The way that you enhance the experience so that it produces loyalty is to get the customer emotionally and logically engaged in what they're doing so that it's meaningful to them. If they're not engaged, then they're going to treat you as a commodity, and you're going to suffer the commodity consequences, which is fighting for profits and very limited loyalty. So there are different categories, and certainly the engagement is the precursor to a good experience for the customer. And we know that whenever we get engaged in that, we say, hey, that was great, that time flew by, and so forth. So it's a very positive environment or experience, and that's what produces loyalty.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that experience is actually the strategy, engagement is the action, and loyalty is the result.
Gotcha. Okay. I agree with that, by the way. You mentioned achieving a certain level of loyalty is a journey. Typically, how long does an organization, or how long does an organization, can they expect the new customer centricity programs to start seeing ROI? Also, is there a difference between verticals and differences between those who have higher corporate buy-in?
Well, first of all, I would definitely say if you have higher corporate buy-in, you are on the fast track. A lot of what I see are marketers really know and understand these concepts, but they're working in environments where they're still saddled with traditional methodology, and they really struggle with getting that higher corporate buy-in. I definitely believe that different verticals are, some verticals are further ahead than others. I would say that the hospitality vertical has a definite head start. I think they've gained traction, although they have a way to go and they still have opportunity. I do believe that that is the one vertical, along with the automotive industry and the case that John brought forth in terms of Lexus. I believe that those two verticals definitely have a head start. I think in terms of how long the journey takes, I believe that you can start getting insights based on your customer data immediately, and you can begin to tweak your tactical execution and your campaigns immediately and begin to see results. However, I do believe that it does take time. It's a process of continuous improvement and creating some sort of starting point to get going and continuously improve from there. John, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Sure. I would, of course, I look at it from the customer's perspective, and what I would say is that certainly there's a journey where you build trust and you establish the value of the relationship through interactions, and that can take time to produce maximum results, as I illustrated with the Lexus example. However, the opportunity is there now. One of the things that's happened in the last number of years is that trust in companies and products has dropped, and most everybody in a category get tarred by the same brush. So you can do things that initially gain what I would call hopeful trust. Do something to shift the focus of the relationship to show the client that you in fact are interested in a win-win relationship. So even something by doing as simple as doing an informative webinar where you are actually sharing something that is of benefit to them can start the process and change the relationship. So if you do something, we run a program we call Elevate the Dialogue, and we'll do programs like a webinar for a particular company where we talk about the process. Our client then in the next conversation has a different level of conversation It's not about product. It's now about how can we help. And the outcome of that can be immediately. They can immediately begin doing something together that enhances business. But there's still the opportunity over time to increase that and protect the loyalty, as well as building the momentum for greater advocacy.
Excellent point. Mark, are you there?
Mark might have.
I think we lost our master of ceremonies.
Well, we're running out. We actually ran our hours, so I think we could probably, if Mark dropped off or we lost him, just thank people for attending.
Yep.
And you have contact information. If you'd like to follow up in any way, please do. And thank you for attending.
Our contact information is up on the slide, and I believe if there are any additional questions that Mark was unable to verbalize, I'm sure that either John or I can get back to you directly. So we really appreciate your time and attention this morning or afternoon, as the case may be, and enjoyed our time with you. Thank you for attending.
Bye.
I can't ask questions now, can I? I didn't put the audio in.